Welcome to Travel Devil. I'm your host, Clara Francken, and in a world full of mass tourism, we're here to talk about unconventional travel. Let's get into it. Praneetha Monipi, welcome to Travel Devil.
Thank you so much, Clara, for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how to travel around in nature without touching nature's biodiversity. What are the do's and the don'ts of touching nature while traveling? Like, for example, rock stacking, which apparently isn't good for biodiversity reasons, which I learned from you already behind the scenes. So, there's so much that we can talk about today. Praneetha, you are a biologist and a wildlife conservationist. In your work, you are addressing the root causes of biodiversity conservation by applying intersectional welfare. It's written like that on your LinkedIn. Those are big, big words. Can you introduce yourself in your own words?
Yes, I recognize that they can be very big, very intimidating words. I'm just going to break it down. So, a wildlife biologist is quite simple. Somebody who studies the biology of wildlife, how they behave, where they live, etc. A wildlife conservationist, on the other hand, is somebody who works to preserve and protect the wildlife that we have on our planet. It's a long word, so it can seem scary, but it's actually not. It's all about how do we protect the wild animals that we inhabit our planet with, and how do we make sure that we don't lose them and their habitats. That's pretty much it. So, addressing root causes through intersectional welfare is something that's very personal to me because a lot of the conservation efforts that we see or social efforts that we see become very separated or disconnected from each other. But through my work, something that I have realized is that people welfare, planet welfare, and animal welfare cannot work mutually exclusive of each other. They are very intricately connected. So, through my work, that is exactly what I'm trying to do, bringing people, planet, animal welfare together to make sure that we can all coexist and address why we have a certain disconnect and what we can do to make sure that it doesn't continue to our future generations.
Amazing. Okay. And what is your background with traveling? Because this is a travel podcast as well. What are we doing here? Right, we're bringing a biologist, a conservationist into the podcast. So, can you tell me a little bit more about your background with traveling? Did you travel a lot as a kid? Are you traveling a lot today? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I have grown up traveling. Essentially, I think the first time I stepped into a forest was when I was 10 years old. And there hasn't been any looking back since then. So I have traveled. So I'm based in south of India, from a city called Mysore. From there, I have traveled to the Western Ghats of India, to the Western region of India, Central Eastern region, and the Northern region of India as well. Only the Northeast part is remaining, and the northernmost parts of the country is remaining. And I'm so excited. I really need to make a plan and start traveling there. So all of my travel so far has included going to different places, learning about different natural habitats, the species that live there, how to protect them, and interact with the communities that live around them. And not only in India, I've traveled a fair bit for wildlife internships and other work. Everything is based on wildlife. So I've traveled to Egypt, I've been to Madagascar and Malaysia, and very recently I also did my second master's degree from the UK. So a lot of my travel is wildlife based.
Oh, wow. Okay. And just to take me back a little bit to younger days, how was that for you as a kid? You've always been traveling back then as well?
Yes. So when I started traveling, it was for a nature camp where we could go into a forest, about 20 children and five environmental educators. We would go stay in the habitat. We would go bird watching every morning and then go look at frogs when it rained. So it was very experiential learning. And that went from going out 1 week to staying out for 3 weeks in a month. And that sort of became my lifestyle because I love traveling and just getting to experience wildlife in all its forms. And it was also very interesting to see how people in different habitats and different regions interacted with the wild animals around them.
Wow, yeah, that sounds amazing. So your parents sent you to those camps when you were a kid?
Yeah, I guess I do acknowledge my privilege that way, that, nobody really stopped me from going to forests. It helped that I was good academically. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So just to give me a little bit of more of an idea, the first camp you were talking about previously, how old were you there?
I was about 10. I was 10. Yeah.
Wow. Imagine your parents sending you as a 10-year-old. That's amazing. Like a lot of credits to your parents. That's really awesome. So you're kind of born within this idea of also taking care of nature then.
Absolutely. So I think even before I could articulate what being connected to the planet meant or what loving an animal meant, I have always been connected. I always felt more at home or more understood by praying mantis. That's a type of insect. Praying mantis on the handle of my bicycle. I have felt more connected to rivers and crabs that I saw. I could sit down near a lake and watch the animals there for hours on end and never get bored.
Wow.
It's always been there.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. Okay, wow, that's really nice. Okay, that's a great insight to have as well. Like, I'm already in awe of your parents. Like, this is great. Okay, so now you grew up to become a biologist. So, how long have you been working as a biologist now?
So I started working alongside my studies. It wasn't a separate path where I started studying and then I went into the job. I started with wildlife rescues and rehabilitation back in 2006 or 7. Initially, how I got into the field was because I had an affinity towards dogs, cats, cows, and horses, and we have a lot of them on Indian streets. So it started with rescuing them, medicating them, and I gradually moved up to wildlife. That's how I began my journey as a biologist, understanding their ecology or their physiology, what they need, their anatomy, their behavior. So that is pretty much how it started, and I integrated my academics into that.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. I actually also wonder, how did tourism impact local ecosystems and biodiversity? Because there's also a lot of tourists coming to India or many other places. You're a traveler yourself. You also explain a bit more about your own experiences. But could you tell me, how do you think that tourism impacts the local biodiversity?
Absolutely. So this is a two-way street, right? I said, like I told you, I come from Mysore. Mysore is known as the palace city of India. We have had royal families. We have several palaces, and it is one of the tourist capitals. Although it is a small town, it is one of the tourist capitals of India. So especially during Dasera, we have a 10-day festival in India that's called Dasera that celebrates the triumph of good over evil, and millions of tourists throng the Mysore Palace and Chamundi Hills. And I have seen that a quaint little town that's very silent, and we usually sleep by 9 p.m. So because Dasara is for 10 days and the entire city is lit, all of the circles, all the palaces, they're all lit for the entirety of that duration. But before that happens, for a week or two, our entire town undergoes a load shedding.
What is that?
So, load shedding is essentially where you preserve a little bit of electricity each day for a few hours by cutting electricity to the entire town. So, you can make sure that that electricity is carried forward during Dasara. So, growing up for us, it was quite natural. We said, oh, Dasara is coming up, so we're not going to have a lot of power. everywhere. And then Dasera would happen, and there would be, we have fairs and carnivals and fests and concerts that happen very late into the night. And I often couldn't help but wonder, what impact does it have on nocturnal animals, whether they're bats, whether they're owls? And I've also seen the kind of damage that a lot of tourist influx can cause, whether it's throwing trash, whether it's feeding animals. We are usually of the concept that, oh, urban wildlife, urban biodiversity is not that important, but they are, because the more and more our populations increase and we expand and the urbanization increases, the more we share resources with each other. So the mountain that I grew in as a child, now they're all developed. They look like somebody took a picture of a quintessential tourist site from a magazine and pasted it onto the city. And lakes are shut down and buildings are built and lodges, and you see the impact that development has because tourism brings revenue. And while this has been one side of it, as I traveled outside, I could see a lot of ignorance towards local communities, towards wildlife. It's always a trend, it's always a cool experience, right? Like, oh, I went and saw a tiger so close, I went and saw an elephant up close. And there's a lot of appropriation and there's a lot of ignorance. I wish I could find better words, but this is the reality of it. When tourism is such a booming sector that people never really took the time to understand the impacts of the waste that is being produced or the carbon footprint, or how even very simple actions as choosing which shop to buy a certain souvenir from, or a 5-minute picture they want taken with a wild animal, the impact of all of that collectively on a larger scale, I did not see people being aware or educated about it. And I don't blame people, right? A lot of the times people don't really know, tourists don't really know. We're going out for the experience. But I do think we need to make a conscious effort, at least at this point in life and time where we have information at our fingertips. We need to make that effort just a little bit and make sure that we are aware of the impact that we are leaving.
Yeah, that's true. I think a big part of tourists, yeah, they don't know. I think a lot of tourists might as well know it a little bit, but then close their eyes because they don't really want to know. They don't really want to get in the topic because knowledge makes sure that you have to do a change. So maybe you hear something and I don't really want to know the full story because my experience wasn't like that.
Absolutely.
Even for myself in the beginning, like you never really know, like you want to take the airplane, you want to go see that wildlife, whatever it is, and you don't really want to think about the consequences. But that's why we grow and learn, right? And that's why we're here today. So today, mostly we want to talk about the do's and don'ts when you're traveling and you want to get in touch with nature. So today, mostly we want to talk about the do's and don'ts when you're traveling and you want to get in touch with nature. We want to talk a bit more about the lesser known do's and don'ts. So before getting into specific topics, you can like sum up briefly what are the things we shouldn't do.
Well, if I had to say in a nutshell, there is a saying among us ecologists and conservationists. It goes like, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but memories. So that is a nutshell summary of what we're going to be talking about. So seashells and rocks, very underrepresented and seen as, oh, there are so many of them. It doesn't matter if we took one or two. But imagine 10 million people saying, oh, just picking up one or two. So picking up seashells and picking up rocks or even rock stacking, they seem like little actions, but these little actions have had very large impacts to a point where the width of a beach is reducing, where we are losing so many marine organisms, and not just those who come under the ones who produce the shells, but also those species who rely on those shells. whether for habitat, whether for food, whether to, build their own shells.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so maybe we can start by talking about collecting seashells. Would be interesting for me to know why is that bad? Like, why can't I just collect the seashell? I see it so much. Like, there's so many of the same shells on the beach. I like it. I think it's pretty. It will be a nice souvenir. It's a free souvenir. I want to take it home and show it to my family, put it on my desk, whatever. Why is there something wrong with that?
Okay, so to start off with seashells, seashells essentially belong to a group of animals that are called mollusks. Now, under mollusks, you have gastropods and bivalves and octopi. Octopuses, octopi, octopi, cephalopods, cuttlefish. So they all come under mollusks. Now, essentially, what seashells do is one, they are homes, right? They are homes to a lot of the animals that take shelter inside them. And they are also homes to the animals that are building the shells themselves. Now, these shells, the seashells that we see, they are made up of calcium carbonate. Seashells have a number of roles that they play. So, one, providing habitats and homes, and two, when they dissolve, it takes a very long time for them to dissolve. But due to the continuous movement of water and waves, they dissolve regularly and they release essential nutrients. They release calcium and they release carbonates into the water. Now, because this calcium gets released inside the water, other marine animals can use that calcium to make shells of their own. Now, the more we pick up these shells, the less concentration of calcium that goes back into the water and the nutrient cycle. And the animals that do produce these shells, they break very easily or they become very soft. So it doesn't necessarily fulfill the role of it being a protective shell for them. Now, that is one. Second, when shells are broken down by bacteria and fungi, they have different polysaccharides. So they have proteins and they have carbohydrates. And they are a complex structure that is made of proteins and carbohydrates. Now, when they're broken down by bacteria and fungi, they help in promoting microbial growth. So when microorganisms grow, and they also so shells also result when they also break down, they also hold down the sand. Now these microorganisms and shells together, they hold the beach sand, which is essentially why we have beaches in the first place. So collecting seashells is never never a good idea. There is research that has suggested so over 30% of beach species of animals have died because of exposure, because they don't have shells to be protected in.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
Yes, and seashells are extremely important. There's also another research article that shows that there has been a 60% decline in seashell abundance in just the last 3 years. And beaches that have a low number of seashells have seen an overall decline in health. Now, the most interesting part of it is a lot of the shells that are collected as bycatch. They are trawled off seas and oceans. Seashells belong in the top 10% of wild animals in the wildlife trade, global wildlife trade.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So all of these animals that get collected and trawled off the seas and oceans, they go into processing plants. And now there have also been studies and sting operations that have been conducted on these processing plants. And they discovered that everybody says, right, no, we harvest them on our own and we do it in captive conditions. But they found that 90% of the seashells that were found there were over harvested and exploited from natural habitats. And of that, 99% of the seashells were collected to be sent to the wildlife trade.
So there's a lot of people collecting shells to sell them. So the problem is maybe bigger than just the average tourist taking one with them. There's just like a systemic problem where people are just specifically looking for a specific kind of shell so that they can sell it and make profit from it.
It's actually both. Because if you cannot go to a beach and collect a shell, you're going to buy it from somewhere. Now, collecting seashells historically, they have been for cultural reasons, they have been for financial reasons, they have been for reasons of trade, they have also been for superstitious reasons. And the highest demand comes from US and Asia Pacific regions. Now, to meet this demand, now when you combing a beach is essentially you walk from the starting to the end point of a beach, and you scan the length and you pick up all the shells that you find. Now, the shells that have washed up on the beach are essentially dead animals. They don't have an animal. They will get decomposed, or another animal will use them, and the whole nutrient cycle and food and habitat, all of that happens. But the demand is so much to have shells across the world that now what people are doing is they are collecting these live animals. So mollusks are animals and they are alive. So they collect them, they dunk them in oil, they sun dry them, they put them into acid, and whatever remaining flesh is present in the shells, they scrape them off by hand. Now, if the same thing you imagine on a larger scale being done to maybe a dog or an elephant or a tiger, there would be huge outrage about it. But this is what is done to meet the global demand to have seashells. And like you said, what do you do when you have a seashell at home? You keep it in your showcase, you keep it on your table, you gift it to someone, or it's an ornament that you wear around your neck or a bracelet around your hand. Now, consider the ecological role they play in the environment. Imagine other species that are dependent on them going through a population crisis and them undergoing abuse and cruelty by being dipped into acid and oil and being sun dried just to have on someone's table or just to use it as ornament or jewelry.
That's insane. That's really crazy. I guess that's a whole other issue. Like it's both of the things are probably wrong. Like you say, like we shouldn't take one shell. But when you're explaining it like this is a way bigger problem than tourists taking one little shell. I'm sure I've got at least a couple of shells here in my home as well. I don't see them right now, but that's not the biggest issue. Actually, that is an issue, like I just learned, but there's even bigger issues as well. I really didn't know. That's really crazy.
It's actually, Clara, interrelated.
Okay.
So what the trade supplies comes from the demand, right? But where does the demand come from? The demand comes from somebody who's combing a beach and shows on social media, oh, I found this, or shows somebody, oh, I found this. Somebody else wants it, and it's easier access. And now, because somebody else wants it and they may not find it on the beach, because so many people have picked up seashells, we have seen a 60% decline. Can you imagine that? A 60%. And mollusks are the second largest group of invertebrate animals after arthropods, which are technically insects and spiders and butterflies. These are the most abundant animals, but they are not able to find them on the beach, or there is a lesser abundance, so they go to the place where their demand is supplied. So it is interrelated.
Okay, thank you for explaining that so well. That's like it's really really interesting to learn about that, and wow. And you were also mentioning rocks before, like people are also collecting rocks both on the beaches as off the beaches. Can you go a little bit more into that topic of rock collecting?
Absolutely. So rocks and pebbles, we see them on beaches, we see them in forests. The thing with rocks is they undergo a process called weathering. So essentially, the influence of wind, water, and other natural processes, it breaks down mountains and then they become rocks, and then the rocks become soil and sand. Now, it is also similar to a seashell's nutrient cycle, where all of the nutrients and minerals that are present in a rock, it goes back into the ecosystem. That is one. Second, because rocks are so long lasting, right? Like they've existed for millions of years, they contain a lot of historical geological data in them. And we have to scale up. Think of it as the same way. It's always one person picking up one rock does not make much of a difference. But 10 million people or 7 billion people picking up rocks everywhere and just keeping it in their house, that makes an impact. And rocks, especially, whether they are big rocks, whether they're big boulders, or whether they're small pebbles, they all help in making sure that soil does not get eroded. They hold the soil in place. Now, everybody keeps picking up rocks. There is a lot of soil erosion that takes place. Now, when there is increased soil erosion, there is decrease in soil fertility because the topsoil is what holds plants and forests and what keeps them intact. Now, we remove rocks and the topsoil washes off, there is no fertility. How can we expect forests to sustain? How do we expect plant life to sustain, whether it's a small plant, whether it's a large tree? They all need the topsoil to sustain themselves. And the next point is that rocks are habitats for smaller animals. Even birds, there are several species of birds who use rocks to make their nests and lay eggs in.
Can I give an idea, or just a thought that's popping up in my head spontaneously? So what if I say like, oh, but I'm looking at the rock, I'm picking it up. I don't see any animal using it right now. I don't see any animal under it. I don't know, maybe there's microorganism I cannot see. You can tell me. But I'm just picking up this rock. I see nothing on there. So I'm free to take it? I guess not.
No. Like I said, everything has a role to play in the ecosystem. Just because we don't see something doesn't necessarily mean it's not there. There are certain species of animals who go out to forage in the day and who come back at night. There are invertebrates, there plants use rocks for incubation. There are several roles that each individual entity plays. And even if you cannot see an animal right then and there, you don't know. For example, there is a salamander called the hellbender salamander. It lives near aquatic habitats, and they are very selective species in that under which rock can I lay an egg. Now, picking up rocks reduces the opportunities for them. And all salamanders are picky. And rocks are usually places where there are eggs, and there are any number of species can have their larval stages under rocks. I think just one last point I wanted to make about rocks is that rocks, especially on beaches, they reduce the intensity of the incoming waves, and they also reduce the intensity of winds and waves, and essentially they act as a barrier to natural disasters. Now, the more rocks you remove, the greater the intensity and the greater the possibility for storms or wave crashes and things like that.
Okay, interesting. And now how about rock stacking? Is that something we can do? I see little kids trying to build a kind of a barrier to make a little waterfall, or also when I'm going on a hike, I would see like a couple of rocks stacked on each other because it looks cute. I don't know. Why are people doing that? Is there a reason for doing that? And why is it a problem? Because you told me that this is not the greatest thing to do.
So, rock stacking, historically, there have been many reasons why people do that. It has been used in several cultures to determine the place where someone was buried, someone or something was buried. It has been used to memorialize somebody who has died because it is considered pure and spiritual. And in the more recent years, rock stacks are used to mark trails. So when you go out on a hike or a trek, and where it is lesser explored, so rock stacks are kept to make sure that hikers do not lose their way. Now, that being said, currently rock stacking has just become a trend where it looks nice and aesthetic for social media. And social media is a goddamn domino effect if there ever was one. So, just to give an idea of scale, imagine there is a large patch of forest and a road runs through it, right? This is dividing the forest into two parts. Now, this is not a large divide in the habitat for a human being or an elephant or a tiger. But say you're a frog. And even if we go down a little bit more, say you're an ant. That is essentially what's happening with microhabitats. It is basically like when you pick a rock from different places and you're putting them on top of each other, serving no absolute purpose, you are picking up an animal's habitat. You're picking up its entire home and you're using it for something that serves no purpose at all. Historic rock stacks, or they're called cairns, so CAIRNS, they're called cairns. So they have stayed for several hundred years. But now people who do not have the knowledge or the expertise on how to stack them right, you just put rocks on top of each other. So when there's a strong wind or there's a strong water current, what you're essentially doing is you're setting it up to fall. Now we don't know which organisms it's going to fall on. And especially in aquatic habitats, whether it's near a waterfall, whether it's near a small pool or a river stream, these are very, very rich in microorganisms. They're very rich in invertebrates, whether it is salamander larvae, whether it is fish larvae, whether it is their eggs, whether it is smaller invertebrates, and you're crushing them. And then comes also how dangerous it is to human beings themselves. Now, we don't think that it is dangerous. We're just stacking rocks, right? We're just putting rocks on top of each other. How can that be dangerous?
How can that be dangerous? Tell me.
There have been so many instances in national parks, especially, where people have gone on a hike or a trail, and even rangers have been misled because somebody decided to stack rocks and they have lost their way within the woods.
Because somebody decided to stack rocks and the rangers or the people think that is the correct way to follow?
Yes, absolutely. And essentially, what we're doing is we're reducing opportunities for different species of animals to build their homes under, to take shelter under. And what we're doing serves no purpose. I mean, yes, there are much bigger issues in the world, but every time we look at the actions that we make, the impacts that we have, some things are just not okay to do. And when everybody is doing it on a same scale or on a larger scale, and one person doing that gives permission to another 10 people to go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm. So is the solution to, when I walk around and I see rock stacking or like rocks on top of each other, is the good thing to do to demolish it? Or when it seems strong, to just keep it there because maybe in the meanwhile some other organisms are between it, so I shouldn't just like throw it down?
So ideally, what would help is to have knowledge of the area before you do anything. So does it have a cultural heritage? Does it have a cultural background? And where are the rocks being stacked? Is it near a trail? Have the forest officials or the rangers done it? Or are there cultural significances to it? Now, if there is none of that, the best way it would be to not kick them down. Please don't kick them down. You can use your hands and just take the rocks and put them down. Now, there's no way of really knowing where exactly they were picked up from, but you can definitely just keep them down and not kick them down. Yeah.
Okay, so gently putting them down is the better option to go.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Feeding wildlife, it's a little bit further away from shells and rocks. Can you tell me something more about why that is, in your opinion, a thing which we shouldn't do?
So, feeding wildlife is also called provisioning. Let's talk about the role that wild animals play. A lot of wild animals help in pollination. Whether it's monkeys or birds or insects, they help in pollinating plants and making sure that they propagate to different regions and that there is a healthy mix happening. Now, when people feed wild animals, wild animals start expecting these resources from around people, and the role that they play as pollinators reduces. Number two, now wild animals cannot differentiate. Oh, this person simply wants to feed me and this person wants to capture me or put me into wildlife trade or take me to captivity. Now, there is one section of people feeding, they get humanized, which means they start expecting these resources from all people. And the closer wild animals and people get together, there are increasing number of negative interactions. Now, this can be disease transfer, this can be actual negative interactions in terms of losing life or limb for both the wild animal and the person themselves. This can also be the wild animals coming closer to urban areas or, where human settlements are present. And this is not good because we cannot guarantee their safety with all people.
Yeah. And something which is happening, for example, in my apartment building, we are feeding the birds. So we have a little bird house, we put in some seeds, and the birds come and eat it because they seem to be looking for food. And so we were like, okay, let's put something up so they are being fed. Is that also a problem?
See, the misconception is that animals don't have enough food or they just don't find the food that they need. Now, while it is true that there is habitat degradation, there is loss of resources, us feeding them is never a long term solution because, one, anybody who's feeding a wild animal, you cannot expect them to completely know what is healthy for that animal. You may not essentially be feeding what is anatomically and physiologically right for that animal. And number two, the best way would be to create more habitat for them. So the question we need to ask is, when we feed wild animals, are we doing it for us or are we doing it for them? If we are doing it for them, and there is, I'm sure majority of the people do not have any ill intentions when they're feeding wildlife. They think, oh my God, the forests are getting destroyed and there's no food and wild animals need food. So what I can tell you is, as good intentioned, as well intended as that is, it really causes more problems for wild animals and eventually for people as well. And again, it becomes a domino effect where everybody just has a negative interaction. The ideal solution would be to make sure you build better habitats for them. You make sure to plant native trees, native plants, native flowers, and keep your cats indoors, keep all the invasive species indoors, and build a garden around your home and have plants in your homes that are friendly for the wildlife around you. And then the birds will come on their own. You don't even need bird feeders.
Okay. Okay. So it's because I thought this was a interesting example because I was thinking like, okay, feeding wildlife, it makes sense. Like I'm not gonna put my hand out and try to feed a bigger animal or an animal which is outside, but then a bird, the food is not coming from my hand, it's hanging in the tree. So it sounds more appropriate to do it that way, but as I'm understanding now, even that is not really the best idea.
That is usually done for aesthetic purposes because when we have good habitat, it's actually quite difficult to see birds because they camouflage really well. Now, what happens with established bird feeders is also that we are conditioning invasive species like cats, which are extremely skilled hunters who don't only hunt for food, they hunt for game. They just know, I'm going to sit here, there's a bird going to come and I'm going to hunt it down. And these things are not seen as actual problems, but cats have been responsible for pushing several species of urban birds to extinction.
Wow.
Better to have a habitat where the birds can also hide in and to keep our cats indoors. Just going to put it out there. Just please keep your cats indoors. And if you're taking them out, take them out on a leash. But eventually, because even if when you feed a wild animal, it's not just about feeding them, right? Where would they nest? Where would they lay eggs? So when you're creating a habitat, you're also making space for them to build nests and lay eggs and have more birds. So that's a long-term solution.
Okay, thank you. So we talked a lot about things we cannot do now. Let's switch it up to what we can do. Are there things like you said, like, oh, we cannot pick up seashells, we cannot do rock stacking, we cannot feed animals, we cannot take the rocks with us at home. Is there anything we can do?
A lot of things. But before I touch on the things we can do, I would like to mention that for everything these days, we say, oh, we should give people an alternative. We cannot always say, don't do this and don't do that. But sometimes there are no alternatives to certain things. For example, we say, hey, we shouldn't put plastic trash into the ocean, but alternatively, you can put something else into the ocean. We don't say that, right?
Yeah.
So we don't say you should not feed ducks bread, but you can definitely feed them biscuits as an alternative. No, we do not do that. Some things are just that. Just don't do it. Just keep your hands to yourself. Don't feed wildlife. Don't pick up stuff. But what we can do, there are so many ways, so many really deep, intricate ways that you can connect with nature around you. So let's come to the list of things we can do. Go out and hug a tree. And I swear by this with everything I have. Remove your shoes, just go put your phones aside and just hug a tree. And I cannot tell you the kind of deep connection that forms when you're near a tree and you hug it and you actually let it in, not for the sake of social media, not for the sake of it being a trend. Don't go into it with like, what am I going to get out of a tree?
I'm gonna hug the tree and ask my boyfriend to film me.
Yeah, actually go with an open heart and hug a tree. And when you go out, try even on a beach, right? As long as you're not living in a place where there are venomous animals washing out into the beach, try to take off your shoes and just walk on the beach. And if you're lifting a rock, please put it back, see what's underneath it, and put it back gently in the same place. Follow a butterfly. And everything I'm saying might seem like, oh, the very little insignificant things. But these little things, like following a butterfly or feeling the warmth of the sunshine when you wake up, those are what will truly, truly connect you to the planet. And you can make an impact in a bigger way, right? There's so many things you can do. Go out, learn about birds, do a little bit of bird watching, see if you can find different amphibians, or maybe you're interested in snakes, or maybe it's fish. Take your camera out, and I think just put away your technology for a while and just really be grounded. The reason a lot of people stack rocks is because there is this notion that rock stacking creates a positive, calm environment to meditate. But you don't need to stack rocks to do that. You just need to be present. And before you travel, always make sure that you really do your research and put a little bit of work into seeing where your money is going. Is it really helping animals? Is it really helping the local ecosystems and things like that? And one very important thing would also be to interact with the locals, because that is the best way to understand what is actually happening in the area, right? So if you have 2 or 3 different shops, when you interact with the locals, you know which shop to go into that is actually sustaining livelihoods, and you can contribute to a positive impact for communities.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
my suggestion would really be, take those chances. Maybe you find a caterpillar icky, but sit down and observe it. Let your body guide you, because our bodies know how to be connected. We just have to be a little open minded and open hearted and let nature speak to us.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe also the difference between like a little child will not be scared of nature as it becomes to be an adult, grow up, like you're always like washing your hand, being so clean, you don't want to step in nature without shoes, you're scared of walking on something that will hurt you, of course, also pollution happening. But now I'm also wondering, and I'm now thinking like, oh, actually I feel kind of bad that I have these seashells in my house. Should I, or just to give an example, right? Should I just go to a beach and lay it back, like put it back on a beach? Is that a solution? Is that a thing that I should do?
So that's where it gets tricky. So growing up, I've also made this mistake. So the residential area, the lane that I lived in as a child when I was 7 or 8 years old, it was still developing at the time. It didn't have a lot of houses. So houses were being constructed. And that's when, you know, all the sand and the cement mounds are there just before construction happens. So we kids, these 7, 8 year old people, little kids, us, we used to go and we used to pick seashells from them. And I had 2 huge boxes of seashells. And I did not know the impact that it had, absolutely not. But 7, 8 years down the line, I saw that the sand did not have those seashells anymore. But the question you're asking, can I put it back? I don't know where that seashell has come from. The thing with that is, as much as every organism, every entity plays a role in its ecosystem, it can become invasive, or it can be a medium for diseases or microbial or invasive species transfer if we take one species from one area and put it in a completely different area. Now, if it doesn't survive there, fine, well and good. But let's say you have collected a seashell from somewhere in India. The microorganisms that it holds, the nutrient composition it has, is completely different to, say, a seashell in Mexico or the northern United States. That is a risk, which is why we always say prevention over cure. So if you don't know where your seashell has come from, if you really want to take a very long route, then I would suggest talk to experts, send lots of pictures, make an identification. But I don't think everybody would put in that effort. So if you don't know where a seashell has come from, leave it there. Use it as an education tool. Let it be a reminder to you of how much of an impact you can make, and the kind of impact you make is up to you.
Okay, good advice. Thank you. And would that another solution to the problem you were mentioning before? People are selling, selling seashells essentially, to be like, okay, so I've got a lot of them. I don't know where I got them from. But instead of having people buying it online from some random shop or from some big organization, I can just sell mine secondhand. Do you also see that as a solution?
Not really, because it's two-dimensional. It comes down to 2 things. One is intent, and one is education. So let's say a person has all of these seashells and you're selling them. So what happens if you want to make more money out of the seashells? Do you then go collect more? Do you not collect more? Are you happy? And then the people that you are selling these to, do they know exactly why they shouldn't be buying more of these? Are you educating them on why you're selling it? And also, because seashells are wildlife, they're wild mollusks, you need to have certain permits and registrations and licenses to sell them. Otherwise, you inadvertently become a part of the illegal wildlife trade, and you do not want to be doing that.
Okay, so actually, if I understand it right, what you're saying right now, selling a shell, it's illegal basically because it is a wildlife, but maybe you can explain that a little bit better or easier to me, because I don't really understand how it doesn't seem alive. So it doesn't seem like it's really a wildlife, because maybe there was a wild animal underneath, but not anymore. So how does it fall under that protection, and how can one say that it is wildlife?
So, for example, the UK has the Coastal Protection Act that was drawn in 1949, if I'm not wrong, that says you cannot collect anything. And so if you cannot collect anything from a beach, you can't sell anything from a beach. The people who do sell, and see, different countries have different regulations for this. So there is an international organization that regulates wildlife trade. So wildlife trade is not only alive animals, it is parts of a wild animal as well. For example, if we look at rhinos or elephants or tigers, it's also illegal to sell rhino horn or elephant tusks, which are made of ivory. It is also illegal to sell bear claws or tiger paws. So they are just parts of an animal. Essentially, they are dead. So they're not alive, but it is still illegal to do that.
Can you name that organization that is international and maybe send me the link afterwards so I can put it in the show notes?
Absolutely. So it is called CITES, CITES. So it is the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species. So this is a regulatory body where, because all different countries have different rules and regulations in terms of selling or acquiring or the trade of wild animal and their parts. So CITES is a regulatory body where all the different countries are signatory to it, and it says now these animals come under schedule 1, or these animals come under appendix 1, appendix 2, and these animals you absolutely cannot sell. These animals or their parts, you need to have certain permits and regulations to sell. Now, as an individual, I really would not, coming back to, what do we do when we have so many shells? So I really would suggest selling them would not be a good idea, because demand creates supply.
Okay. Okay, I understand. Okay, thank you for explaining that. Maybe are there some last things you want to mention about how to repair a place or the do's?
Yes. So we said be grounded and mindful and be connected, but there's also something to be said about communication and connection we have to the planet and to the people. So if you see rock stacks, gently put them down, don't kick them down. And if you see somebody collecting seashells, please strike up a conversation with them, talk to them. Don't immediately go and be like, no, that is illegal, or, you're ruining the environment. Let's not do that. But please go up to them and have a conversation and understand why they're picking up seashells, and also talk to local communities. That is one thing I really, really suggest. I'm not saying that everybody will have a positive response to you striking up a conversation with them, but it never hurts to start a dialogue and really understand different perspectives. And I think the end would be, we all play a role in protecting our planet and destroying our planet. It's up to us to decide which way we go. And it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody make mistakes. I have made mistakes. We are not always going to know everything. But the difference comes when you think, oh, so this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I did. What impact does it have?
Knowledge is power, I think, yeah.
Absolutely. And taking a little bit of responsibility. But are you willing to take the responsibility that comes with that knowledge and information? Because at this point in time, we really need to take a little bit of responsibility. And it's not huge. We have this notion that biodiversity conservation happens only in the Amazon or in the Himalayas or so far in a forest. But your actions do matter. Whether you're inside your home, whether you're feeding a bird, whether you're walking on a beach, everything you do matters. You just have to decide what kind of action that you want to be a part of. And I'm sure it's changing. A lot of people are changing. And I'm so proud to see so many people making positive changes. And I'm sure they will continue to do that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. Well, thank you for explaining all of that already. That's a lot of things we can think about. And I think what maybe also is good to do if you have some family members or anything that are interested in this topic and can learn something is share this podcast with a friend, right? Because we learned a lot about all of these topics right now. All of the information is coming right to you. So share it with a friend. And yeah, let's make sure that more people know about all of this, right?
Yes. And just one last thing, be the annoying person. Be the annoying person in your friend group. Be the annoying person in your family. Care about everything you care about. Don't let anybody tell you that you are sensitive, you're too kind. Oh my God, that is so small. Be that person who people look at and go, oh my God, this person's going to talk about how this is going to be beneficial or not beneficial to the planet. Be that person. Because you know what?
Yes.
That person is the one who changes mindsets and who brings impactful action. So be annoying, be that wild child who hugs trees and tells people not to pick up seashells.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, yes. Be loud and proud and share the knowledge. Yes. All right, to end up our conversation, because I really feel so inspired just by talking to you, I think we convinced our listeners, or I think we kind of did explain how we can all contribute to a better planet when we're traveling, or just to take care about microorganisms and just the biodiversity of the world. I just wanted to end this podcast with one last question. And if you could share a story of an experience you have had where you really felt the impact that something had on wildlife. There must be things that happened that you saw that you can share, maybe one story.
Absolutely. So my journey has been a lot of experiences and a lot of situations that have had an impact on me. So it hasn't really been just one thing, it has been a series of several things. But the one thing that I really would like to share that left a very deep impact on me was I was 11 years old and I went to a forest, and we have a species of deer in India that are called sambar deer. Uh, one There was a deer who got orphaned and essentially who got separated from his herd as a little one, and the kitchen staff of the forest department, they tried to reunite this little guy with the herd, but they were unsuccessful. So they took care of the deer, and he was less than a year old when we visited, and there were so many people who were so fascinated that, oh, there's a wild deer and it's so young and it's so fun. Now, what happened with that was so many people got so close to this little guy, they would feed him all kinds of human junk food that was unhealthy for him. And multiple people would touch him and hold him close and, take pictures with him. Now, as an 11-year-old little girl, I didn't really know the ecological consequences or scientific explanations or what is humanizing, whether it's healthy. All I could understand was I felt how wrong it was and how incredibly exhausting it must be a baby animal who has been separated from its herd, who doesn't know these hundreds of people that are coming and touching it for a picture. To me, it just felt wrong. It was in my head, in my heart, without being able to articulate why it was wrong, without being able to pinpoint that this is the reason you shouldn't be doing it. I felt very uncomfortable and I felt heartbroken. And we stayed there for 7 days. And at the end of the seventh day, we had a little circle gathering where we were asked, so, how did you feel about the camp? What do you want to do? What are you taking away? And I remember my answer to that was, I always wanted to be a veterinary doctor. I grew up saying I wanted to be a dog doctor, and then it became a veterinary doctor. But by the end of that camp, I said, I want to dedicate my life to helping protect Earth's wildlife because I cannot see this happening again. I don't know how it made such a deep impact on me, but just being around that orphaned fawn who people were exploiting for a bunch of pictures really got to me. And that's the time I decided that I want to dedicate my life to help protect wildlife.
Wow, yeah, that's a crazy story. And that's really beautiful, actually, going all full circle. Now you're doing what you wanted to do as an 11-year-old, right?
Yes, it's definitely crazy, but I think the values of the little girl inside me will always be my North Star.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also good to always listen to your gut feeling. Like, of course, there's always a scientific explanation to all of it, and you can share all of that information with us. But in the end, it's also about following your gut feeling. If something feels wrong in any situation, it is wrong, right? If it feels wrong, there's something going on which isn't great. So that's always really good. That's why I love also children, because as a kid you just don't have that filter yet. Like, you don't. Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, thank you for sharing that story. That's a really great one. So now to end up our little podcast, I do have quick questions for all of my guests. Those are 9 very quick questions you can answer with one word or one sentence. And if you're ready, I can start with the first one.
Yes, let's do this. Yes.
All right. So, how old are you now?
28.
How old were you the first time you traveled to another continent?
Wow. It was 2017. So I think 20, 21.
Okay. What is the longest time you've been away from home?
Ooh, a month while traveling.
Okay. Would you rather see a lot of places or get to know one really well?
I would rather travel to a lot of places.
Would you rather save money on accommodation or pay for a good bed?
Huh. Wow, this is tricky being a person who travels for wildlife biology. uh, I think a good bed. Yeah.
What word would you teach a foreigner who wants to learn your language?
Mohabbat.
Mohabbat.
Yes, it means it's not just love, but it's committed love.
Oh, that's a beautiful word. And in which language is that?
That is in Hindi.
In Hindi. Perfect. What can't you travel without?
Oh, my water bottle. I need my water bottle. I hate taking plastic water bottles. So I have one water bottle that has 105 liters capacity, and I'm like, yes, that's it.
Amazing. What's your favorite travel song? A song that you love to listen to when you're traveling or thinking about traveling?
Oh, so we have a singer in India who's called Lucky Ali, and he makes amazing journey and travel songs, very rooted and very connected. He has a song that's called Oh Sanam. I will send you the link after this podcast. You should definitely listen to it.
Okay, amazing. Now, last question. Why do you travel?
Because I want to experience different cultures. I want to be able to see all of the magic that is on our planet, whether it's wildlife, whether it's ecosystems, marine ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems. But I will say this, there have been times that I have sacrificed on traveling because of the impact that it can have. That is something that I'm very mindful of. So that's a balance that we have to maintain. But if it came down to protecting a place, protecting a wildlife species by not traveling to it, I would make that sacrifice.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. And now I also want to know, where can my listeners find you? If they want to send you a message, ask you questions, can they write into you? And where could they find you?
Absolutely. Yes. Please reach out to me with any questions you have. I love talking to people. Thank you so much for having me. Or if you want to find me on Instagram, I am Planeta Praneetha. I will type it in for you. On LinkedIn, I'm Praneetha Monipi. And if you want to send me an email, you can just type praneethamonipi@advaya.org. And anybody can find me in any of these 3 places.
All right. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Clara. I think it's so important what you're doing. You're an incredible host. You've made me feel very comfortable and just I am a nerd, I am a geek, but I loved that I had somebody to share that with. Thank you so much for having me and for doing what you do and for educating people on how to travel with a positive impact.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You also explained such important things so well. You put it into words which are understandable, and I'm really happy to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
This was Travel Devil, brought to you by me, your host, Clara Francken. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to continue the conversation or suggest any future guests, you can go to my Instagram @Clara Francken. Take care, and I will see you next Thursday.